Welcome back to the Milwaukee Show, and today we are talking about game number 7 between the Boston Bruins and the Toronto Maple Leafs, where Boston knocks them out and doesn't redo what they did last year, which is completely make a joke of themselves. However, this is still not a good game for them, because even though they escaped doing what they did last year against the Florida Panthers and escaped losing once again another game-clinching series, they might have beat them, right? They might have escaped it. They might not have done it 3 times in a row, which would have been a record for one of the most humiliating records to have in all of major sports. But regardless of them escaping it, this is still not a good game for them. Not at all. Not even close. Because I'm going to skip this first part here. Because first, it's a bad series for both of these two teams. For the Boston Bruins to move forward in this series, they looked fine in the first 4 games, I would say. The one game that they lost against Toronto was pretty... I wasn't totally thrilled with Boston's performance, but Toronto did bring kind of a fire to that game. So I'm okay with that one. With that game that they lost in the first 4, right? The one that made it 3-1. But the 3 games that they won there, right, in that span, I liked Boston's game because they didn't need to play that hard because Toronto really isn't that good of a team, right? And as much as you want to come after this and be like, oh, whatever, Toronto, this is the best defense they've ever had. This is the best whatever they got, blah, 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 right? If this is the best defense Toronto's had, this is the strongest Toronto's been, this is whatever you want to say, then they still are not even close to a Stanley Cup, right? And I'm going to talk more about Toronto in a second and in another video soon. But for this game, Toronto did not bring the fire. And Boston, once again, neither did they. This is a do-or-die game, once again, for the Toronto Maple Leafs with their $44 million core, whatever the hell they all cost together, right? With this super expensive team, with all these millionaires and the biggest, most hottest franchise in the world, and that gets all the media attention, gets all of this and that, and blah, blah, blah. In a do-or-die game against their big rival, they once again cannot bring any sort of fire, any sort of fight to this game. And then, not just that, but then the Boston Bruins, a team that is once again trying to escape the hell that they're going to put themselves through if they lose this game, did not bring the fight again. All of these things go together, and to me, just make another, a really bad performance, a really bad showing, and just a horrible series for both of these two teams. But the only people that I would say that came out of it for number 1 best player award has to go to Jeremy Swayman, right? Jeremy Swayman, one of the most impressive performances in all of the playoffs I've ever seen, as for the 10 years I've truly been watching hockey. Probably one of the top 10 performances I've ever seen. The way this guy played in these 7 games to keep his team alive, I guess 6, to keep his team alive and competing every game, even when his team lost and didn't show up for him at all and left him completely to dry. Even when his team tries to score on himself like Wotherspoon did, he is there to shut that puck out of the net. He was so good. If he was on a team, if he was on Toronto right now, I would be saying, yep, this could be Toronto's year. With the offense that they have and the defense that they can put together, and with Swayman being a shutdown guy, that is the difference maker that a good goaltender makes. And that is a guy like Jeremy Swayman, who makes such a difference in this series and could have made such a difference for a team like Toronto. And they could have had him in that whole big story where they could have drafted him and they didn't. But Jeremy Swayman, best player for the Bruins. I would say the best player for Toronto would have to be William Nylander. I know he didn't play most of the series, or did he play most? No, whatever. I know he didn't play all of this series, but I think regardless of that, it would have to be Nylander, right? Marner, not even close. Tavares, no. I think the only real guy who could come close to that, and it's not a goaltender, would have to be either, Nylander. I would say Jake McCabe was all over the ice when I was watching him. He might not have made a bunch of points. He might not have made the biggest plays, but he's always consistent, always pressuring, always giving the body out there. So McCabe is like a good honorable mention, but I also would say maybe Max Domi and Matthew Nyes. Those guys were always pushing, and maybe not, especially Nyes might not be making the most interesting of plays, but he always was skating fast. He was always going hard. in going into those puck battles. So Matthew Knies gets a nod too, but I think Nylander, for just sheer how many points he put up on the board, how he was the most consistently top good player, even though he was apparently having migraines where he couldn't see. Like, Nylander, I would say, probably best player on Toronto. But other than that, like, a lot of other guys, other than the guys I just mentioned, other than, like, Marchand, maybe DeBrusk and McAvoy, I would say, other than those guys in this game, Lindholm, impressive guy. Hampus Lindholm, hell of a performance tonight. Doesn't make him that. I mean, doesn't redeem him for the rest of the team's sins either, because this team just they did not show up for their own survival, and it just is sad. And for me, I'll talk about Boston more in a second, but for Toronto first, let me get to them. Toronto, this is the end of the core, right? It has to be. At this point, Toronto needs to face the facts that this core that they have. I don't know how it didn't hit Kyle Dubas in the face ever, or how it hasn't hit Brad Treliving, that this core is not working. And next season is the last year for Tavares and Marner's deal. For Tavares, I doubt there will be any takers for him because of how he performs on this team and what he could bring to another team. I think would be very poor, especially for a contender, for who would want to bring him in. But for Mitch Marner, there will be a call out there for him, right? If he's on the market, I'm sure other teams have questioned about him before. And Mitch Marner is a great player, and I think he could be excellent. The issue is that it's everyone on this team, right? Because usually there is one or two guys that evaporate in the playoffs, right? The issue with the Maple Leafs is that it's everyone, right? Last year in the playoffs, it was Artemi Panarin and it was Zibanejad for the Rangers, right? But no one's holding those guys' feet to the fire, right? No one's trying to get them off the New York Rangers, right? They come back this year, they look great, right? It just happens that a guy evaporates. The issue is that for the last 6 years, and consistently, and not just the last 6 years, every year, it's the same. It's the four top guys. It's not like Marner, and then you go down to like Jake McCabe, who's only been on the team for 2 years now, but whatever, and some other random guy on the team, right? Like it's not that. It's the four core, right? So for me, Marner, you need to move on, because for Matthews to stay to one on this team, because he only signed for not too long of a deal, right? To keep him happy, right? For the window that this team has to win. To keep Matthews happy, and Nylander just signed as well. To keep him on this team even longer, right? And keep him happy, right? I think you got to get rid of a guy like Marner and try to replenish either the defense or goaltending, right? Or Marner and get a couple pieces, right? And I know people make the joke for some reason about the New York Islanders, but for the Islanders or the Penguins, I would lean more towards the Islanders, because if they can trade like Mitch Marner and get a guy maybe a potentially like Noah Dobson, which would be a kind of a stretch. I don't think they'd give him up, but if they could trade like Marner for like potentially like Pulock and Pelech. Just an idea, like that trade would not happen. But if they can trade like him for those two guys, or just a theory of like a kind of trade like that to any team where they can retrieve back like a solid couple guys, I think would be big for the Maple Leafs. Because for the Maple Leafs, do they need more offense? Not really. Can they find like a replacement with the cap space that they can make up by trading away a guy like Mitch Marner and get someone in free agency like Steven Stamkos? I think so, even though him and Matthews might be stepping on their toes a little bit with their type of playing style, but whatever, right? They can find those guys on the market, right? But, I mean, maybe not to replenish Marner's offense, but they can put in a guy who can fit in the top six, right? But the biggest issue is defense and goaltending, right? And then a top six true competency. I don't know what the trade would be, but Marner, this is the time to get rid of him now. The core has failed. And for me, for Toronto, I'll make a bigger video about them soon enough, talking about all about them and what the hell's wrong with them. But for the Boston Bruins right now, I'm not impressed. I'm not happy with this team. I'm not the biggest Boston fan. I don't want to say that I don't care about Boston, but like I am someone who would potentially cheer for them, right? Especially not in a series against Florida, but going forward against like the Rangers or something like that. I'm out there, right, for this team. I'm looking out for them. I love Pasternak. I love Marchand. And Swayman. Like, I love a lot of guys on this team. But they did not show up for these last 4 games. They did not. They just simply did not show up. And going forward, going up against the Florida Panthers, they're going to literally they don't need to just like go back to game 1, right? They don't need to just they literally need to reverse the clock and play the way they played when they made it all the way to the Blues, against the Blues in 2019, right? That's what they need to do. They need to reset this whole team and kick in a new way of playing. Because the way they played again in the first 4 games of the series, not going to cut it. The way they've been playing recently, not going to cut it. And they play tomorrow against the Panthers, who dominated the Lightning. The Bruins are going to need to step up. They're going to need to change their game big time. Swayman is not going to be able to contend because when the Maple Leafs scored is when they actually played that playoff style of those grindy, dirty goals. Florida is the godsend of that kind of goal and playmaking in the playoffs, and that is what they have to face up against. That's when Swayman lost, and Olmark is not going to be the savior of that team either. This team's going to need to reset and change their whole style of play, or this is a sweep incoming, and I would not be surprised if the Bruins continue their play that they just did. They're going to be playing. I think the Panthers could sweep the first 2 rounds. Not even to question it. The Bruins would have no hope. But for me, this game, Lindholm's goal, a big one after Nylander got that big backdoor goal. Lindholm to bounce back and get that goal after playing such a good game. Good for him. And Pasta, that big play at the end there. But still, it's those kind of plays, right? The Bruins didn't do anything. They didn't make this big comeback in this game or in overtime to really show yeah, we're back, baby. No, they still, it was just Pasta had a good play, a good setup where the Maple Leafs and especially Morgan Riley had a bad defensive play, and it led to them giving up that first goal. So, that ending goal. So, I'm going to talk more about these 2 teams soon, as I got to make a video for the Panthers and Bruins soon. So, you're going to be hearing more about this soon. So, that is all I got to say. So, thank you for watching this. If you made it this far, please, I'm begging you, please subscribe. Please. Until next time, too sweet. Have an amazing day, and ta-ta for now.